I've been making Swedish meatballs for years, and my go-to recipe is from an old Swedish cookbook I have. And the other day I happened to turn the page and I noticed a recipe for Swedish stuffed onion rolls called Lökdolmar. And I had to try them, and they are really yum. They use the mixture from the Swedish meatballs, and they're stuffed into tender onion leaves and then baked in the oven, so there's no frying involved. Lökdolmar can be served as part of a smorgasbord or as a main dish. I've made them 3 times in the last 3 weeks. I think I've nailed the recipe now, and this is how I do it. The first step is preparing the onions. You'll need the largest onions you can find, about 2 kilos in total. Today I used 8 large onions. Peel the onions, keeping both ends intact if you can, and don't worry if you tear through an outside layer, just peel it off so you end up with a smooth outside. Take a sharp knife and cut it only halfway into the centre, then stop. You'll feel when to stop because it will be in line with the core and there'll be some resistance. Place the onions in a large pot, cover with cold water, place on a lid and put it over a high heat to bring it to the boil. When it comes to the boil, remove the lid, turn down the heat just slightly, let it cook for between 45 minutes to 1 hour. You'll need 1 cup of mashed potato for this recipe, which equates to 1 large potato, somewhere between 350 and 400 grams. Peel, chop into pieces, cover with cold water and place on the stove and boil away until it is fork tender. Mash the potato and set it aside. When the onions are done, they will be super tender and almost falling apart. This is how you want them. The core will be holding them together. Transfer to a dish and set aside to cool completely. And whilst the onions are cooling, make the meat filling. In a small fry pan over a moderate heat, melt 15 grams of butter, and when the foam subsides, add 4 tablespoons of finely chopped onion and cook for about 5 minutes until they are soft and translucent but not brown. In a large bowl, combine the onions, 500 grams of mince. I use 250 grams of pork mince and 250 grams of beef mince. However, the original recipe says to use only minced beef. 2 tablespoons of finely chopped parsley, the mashed potato, 4 tablespoons of dried breadcrumbs, 6 tablespoons of cream, 1 whole egg, a teaspoon of black pepper and a teaspoon of salt. Knead vigorously with both hands or beat with a wooden spoon until all the ingredients are well blended and the mixture is smooth and fluffy. And you've just made Swedish meatballs. I usually add 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg and 1/4 teaspoon of allspice to this mix, but I actually forgot. A little old age creeping in. But either way, it doesn't really matter. It tastes delicious, and these 2 spices were not in the original recipe. The core part of the onion are easily removed, and then I like to take a pair of scissors and chop the onion top. Pull off each onion layer separately. They should slide off quite easily. You won't be able to use the tiny bud part. They're a little bit like pearl onions. But don't throw them away, just refrigerate them and use them in another dish or even an omelette. Cut the largest outer leaves of the onions in half, but remember to leave them large enough to enclose the stuffing. Put a heaped teaspoon of the meat stuffing in the middle of each onion leaf and enclose it by folding over the edges of the leaf. You'll end up with some slightly different sizes, but that's okay. I just try to group them together a little according to their size. At this point, they may be covered with plastic wrapping and refrigerated for up to 2 days before cooking. This recipe makes a lot of onion rolls. I'll also leave the measurements for half this amount in the description of the video. When you're ready to roast them, preheat your oven to 200 degrees Celsius with a fan or 220 without a fan, so a very hot oven. I find that a tin, shallow roasting pan works better than an enamel one, but you could use either. Place about 40 grams of butter into the pan and put the pan in your hot oven for about 5 minutes to heat up. Then place the onion rolls sealed side down, side by side in the butter, and baste some of that hot butter over the tops of the rolls. Bake for 15 minutes, then baste with the butter in the bottom of the dish and sprinkle generously with some fresh breadcrumbs. I like to add a little extra melted butter on top of the breadcrumbs. Return this to the hot oven and bake for another 15 minutes or until the onions are lightly brown and the crumbs are crisp. You can serve these as part of a buffet, perfect for a feast or just as a meal on their own. They are so tender that you can cut them with a butter knife, and they are very Moorish and light, so allow quite a few per serving. Mike and I enjoyed them 2 nights in a row with a fresh salad on the side. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy this recipe, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.